prioritizing agility, sweet security, and divine DevOps. Now, before Ashok and Richard come out on stage to talk about DevOps, we've got a short and sweet video to share with you that will talk about how DevOps is helping industries that are being disrupted in today's application economy.
This is John, CEO of TopBank. He was browsing the news on a regular workday when he came across an article that showed his competitor rolling out a new mobile app that provided all-round retirement planning to expand their footprint in Europe. In the highly competitive banking industry, John is always looking to leverage the power of software to stay ahead of the competition. He knows he and his team are well prepared to meet new challenges. John heads over to the office of his global head of digital banking, Lisa, and told her about their competitor's new app. He then asked Lisa whether they were ready to launch Project X, the game-changing app that TopBank had been developing. He emphasized that the app needs to achieve top ratings and not fail. Lisa was confident. She whipped out a mobile phone to show John the current status of Project X, TopBank's all-new mortgage app. The team has collaborated with key government agencies and partnered with dozens of lenders to address 90% of the tasks customers needed to complete in order to purchase a new property, reducing the time taken for processing a loan application from weeks to just a few hours, removing the need for tedious paperwork and enhancing the overall customer experience. A complex app like this typically takes months or up to a year to develop, test, and launch. However, with the adoption of DevOps methodology and tools, the entire process can be completed in a matter of weeks. Furthermore, the app has gone through rigorous testing and is set to shake up the market as soon as it is launched. Surprised by the rapid turnaround from development to deployment for a complex application like this, John wanted to find out more. Lisa explained that the DevOps methodology made all the difference. Before adopting DevOps, the product owner, development and operations teams used to work in silos, and creating a complex app like this would take months to complete. However, after adopting the DevOps methodology, this enabled all three teams to collaborate with a single shared objective, enabling agile parallel development, continuous delivery, and agile operations. Lisa elaborated that the new team leveraged APIs to speed up development and integration with existing services. This also provides secure connectivity with external partners. Each team could also develop applications in parallel by using CA service virtualization to simulate the dependent systems and data, speeding up development time by 25%. Lisa went on to highlight that the app has also been tested continuously. Each new application built was automatically deployed into their staging environment and regression tests were triggered against it. To ensure the application performs well under full load, it was tested from the cloud by simulating production conditions. Automation coverage was also significantly increased by reusing virtual services that provide simulated datasets. Impressed, John wanted to know how soon they could launch. Lisa shared that they have already been testing the app for a month, and it is 100% ready to launch once the business decision is made by the management. They will also be able to monitor the responses of their customers across the globe, in Asia, Europe, and the US in real time. Links to the lenders and agencies were also ready to go because of the secure API gateway. Then, Lisa received an alert from CA Release Automation, informing her that a new feature which allows customers to provide their digital signature was ready to be released. Lisa then hit the release button, which automatically released the new feature to the cloud in Asia and Europe. At this moment, Stephen, the IT director, popped in with news that their competitor's app had encountered a customer privacy breach in their test environment. He reassured John and Lisa that with the DevOps methodology, TopBank's app is robust and secure because test data is generated synthetically to avoid such incidents. Plus, the real-time CA visual infrastructure dashboard ensures that they will be the first to know and react if a problem arises. 1 week after the app was launched, The app stores all showed excellent user ratings and positive user feedback. TopBank had successfully entered 3 new markets simultaneously before any of its competitors could, and they were able to reach millions of new customers with their digital banking services. A satisfied John puts down the newspaper with the news featuring their mortgage app. As he glanced at his smartwatch, a new idea for a smartwatch app popped up in his mind.
Thank you, Ashok. I'd like to welcome Ashok Vasan, Vice President for Application Delivery for APJ, CA Technologies.
This is my lightsaber. I'll put it on. So, hope you liked that video, folks. And all of you have been hearing about DevOps for the better part of today and probably reading about it. So, in case you're wondering what it is, who wants to take a shot at what DevOps means? Kelly. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Development and operation.
Excellent. More ice cream for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so he's absolutely right. It's really breaking down the pre-existing sort of situation where development was working separately from operations, and now we're trying to bring those two teams together, collaborating as a single team with shared objectives. That, in its simplest sort of definition of what DevOps is. Okay? Now, that's a simple way of defining it. It's going to take a little bit of doing. But before we get into that, I want to share some of our findings of what kind of responses are people having to DevOps. And so what we did is we sanctioned a survey through Freeform Dynamics, the results of which have been pretty impressive. So in the APJ market, is DevOps new? Study suggests no. 69% of the respondents have already started adopting DevOps practices. Okay, so that's pretty encouraging. China and India leading, but pretty much more than all the countries that we went and surveyed, more than half respondents have said yes to this question. So now the question is, you saw the video and you saw how powerful DevOps is, but we went and asked these people why they felt DevOps was so important for them. So it came down to a few things. It's a matter of trying to make sure that they move away from this the usual way of fixed product cycles to a more continuous mode of releases. Okay? They wanted to move to a mindset of being experimental if you're trying to innovate. Okay? If Stephen talked about the innovation factory earlier. So if you're in a mindset of innovating and coming up with new services and products, you've got to be able to experiment and realize the results of those experiments quickly so you can make a decision. So that's another key reason why DevOps becomes important. However, you need to be able to do this very, very efficiently. It's doing more with the same level of IT assets that you have. So streamlining IT becomes very important, and making sure that they're being more productive is a very critical reason for having DevOps methodologies in place. And last but not least, you've heard this over and over again, and I'm going to repeat it because every business now is a software business. And in order for your business to run efficiently, you better have a great software factory running inside. Okay? Now, that's sort of the approach, but what kind of results are they expecting out of this, and why does that make it so important? It really boils down to two key parameters. One is around the bottom line and top line. So it's very clear that DevOps, they anticipate returns on market share, on revenues, and profits. So that's one side. And then on the other hand, they expect better customer acquisition and better customer retention benefits coming out of DevOps. Why? Because basically, if you're going to be able to deliver services that are more relevant to their customers, you obviously expect people to start adopting your products and services and to be able to use it on a continuous basis. Very compelling reasons, therefore, to make sure that DevOps is is utilized within your organization. There was an earlier question to Rob about whether DevOps is going to be necessary. I think the answer is a resounding yes. I forget who asked that question, but we are actually of the opinion that it's going to be a standard operating procedure. Even some of our federal customers, we've got federal customers who started to adopt these methodologies. So I just wanted to make sure I answered that question, even though Rob said so. So where does CA fit in this, right? We've got essentially two key pillars. I'm going to be talking about continuous delivery as one of the core capabilities of enabling a DevOps methodology within your organization. And Richard will be talking about the ops part of it, the agile operations part of it. Okay. So, now let's talk about this DevOps in the context of people who have led the business, right? The digital leaders, as it were. So what have they done? They've started to create what we're calling as wicked problems. Okay? Wicked because they were problems that you didn't really know existed. Okay? Until Airbnb came along and said, you've got a spare room, you didn't know that it was really going to waste. Now all of a sudden you're saying, how do I put it on the market and get some revenue out of it? Right? Car sharing. All of a sudden you realize that I've got 3 empty seats in the car that I'm driving, why not try and make some money out of it? So that's the kind of problem. But what they did was, they were essentially, they had an underlying capability which enabled them to do two things. One, they were architected for success. Okay? And I'll go into what that architecture looks like. And then they gave outstanding experiences to their users. Okay? Which is what the goal is. So, Stephen talked about what's essential: microservices, containers, and platform as a service. 3 key ingredients to be architected for success. Now, let's look at them individually. Microservices, a great new software architecture, the way software is going to be written, or is being written, okay, comes with tremendous amount of benefits in terms of being manageable, small and lightweight in nature, and so forth. However, there are challenges to actually developing and managing it because the testability or the quality aspects of it becomes huge in order for it to be of use. So you've got to take that into consideration, or organizations have to take that into consideration when they talk about microservices as a strategy. Essential, but you've got to be able to handle it when you launch or start off on that journey. The second thing is containers. Containers is, again, to address a core problem which was taking developers and other users of development organizations a lot of time to establish an environment for themselves. Okay? That problem got solved with containers. However, so the benefit you get out of this is speed. Speed to stand up a little small group and be able to work effectively very quickly and start writing code as soon as possible. Okay? But what's the problem? These containers are, they are repeatable pieces, but again, you've got to make sure that the work coming out of these and managing these containers are within your control, within the organization's control. So you can see a proliferation of these containers, which is going to become a problem in the future unless there is a mechanism to manage it. And the third thing is platform as a service. Platform as a service gives you scalability. Okay? There is this ongoing debate, some of it which is actually being controlled by regulators, which is, do we go on the public cloud, or do I have a private cloud, or some sort of hybrid instance? But the reason for this is, again, the question of, you don't want to differentiate your organization based on the kind of infrastructure power that you might have, because it's really wasteful and expensive. Where you want to differentiate yourself is the kind of applications you're writing. And therefore, platform as a service becomes important because it takes away all the governance and management and the console and reporting aspects of how your instances are being run, managed, virtualized, etc. So while you get the scalability, there are issues pertaining to how this is going to be stood up within an organization to figure out whether it's going to be cloud-based or private and so forth. Now, contrast this with traditional software factories. Traditional software factories obviously don't have that architecture, and as a result have some huge issues. Okay? Primary of which, there are actually three main issues. One is the whole developer performance is poor. Okay, not because they're bad developers or bad software engineers, it's just because of the process that they follow. They're writing code in a sequential manner, they're waiting for systems and data which is not available to them, and it takes them a long time to write code and release it without having tested it fully. The second issue is testing. A lot of it is either under-tested or manually tested. And by definition, you're not going to be able to cover the kinds of situations that you expect, the features that you want to test. And finally, when it comes time to deploying this code, you're doing it through either scripting. So somebody's writing automation scripts, okay, trying to understand how this software needs to be deployed in the production environment or into a pre-production environment. It takes a huge amount of time, wrought with errors, and once a problem happens, there's all kinds of finger pointing going on. So this is what a traditional software factory looks like. Okay? Slow, inefficient, with lots of idle time and waste. Okay? So, I said development is a sequential process in the traditional software factory. Where do we get to? A mode where people are working collaboratively in parallel. Okay? So if another team is working on a part of code which your team might be needing, you don't need to wait for them to write the code completely. You can virtualize the kind of responses you can get. That's a cool capability which did not exist. Okay? Now, imagine that, and then you saw in the video, once you create a virtualized instance, that instance is now available for everybody to reuse. So all of a sudden, you've got an order of magnitude improvement in the productivity of the development staff. That's fantastic. Okay? Quality acceleration. Okay? Very, very critical. Okay? In all the agile conversations that we had, we didn't cover one aspect. The speed of testing has to be greater than the speed of development. Oftentimes, you look in most project plans, time has been allocated for development, but not much for testing. When in reality, you will find that the amount of time taken to test is way longer. It's not a symptom that we should support and tolerate. Okay? We'll show you how that's going to get fixed. And then end-to-end automation. There should not be, once you understand how the software has been written and the environments through which it has to progress, you have a handle on the operating system and the databases and all the various other environments, it should be with a click of a button that the software gets deployed. Not just in one instance or one environment, it should be promoted from one stage of development all the way through production. Okay? So that, if you achieve these three things, you've got continuous delivery. Cool? Very cool. Okay. So let's get into parallel development a little bit more in depth. Remember two things in this area. You've got to eliminate the constraints. Developers today are constrained because they have either no data or no systems or access to third-party tools. So you've got to eliminate system constraints, data constraints, cost constraints, and any other kind of development constraints that you might have. Service virtualization helps you do that. You can virtualize third-party systems. If you're a ticketing system, you don't need the ticketing. If you're a travel agent, for instance, you don't need to have the ticketing system that's a proprietary third-party application. You can virtualize that. If you're a stock exchange, you don't need the kinds of feeds that you need from a bank, etc. You can virtualize that. If you're a payment company, merchant onboarding, you can virtualize that whole exchange. So when I'm writing code to onboard a merchant, for instance, it becomes a really, really more productive process. APIs, it's the other big constraint that is stopping companies, developers from accessing systems that are in the back end of an organization. So API management, as Steven's been talking to, is going to be very critical to making this happen. So eliminate all dependencies, all constraints. You will see up to 50% improvement in the productivity of developers through using this. Okay? I already talked about the virtues of parallelizing and making sure that people are going to be working in parallel and collaboration. So I'll move on. Quality acceleration. Okay? Quality acceleration. Today the situation is, as I mentioned, too little testing, not adequate coverage, and manual. You've got to be testing faster. You've got to be testing more. And you've got to be covering as much of your requirements as you possibly can. And today it's guesswork. With CA's test data management suite and test coverage optimization capability, we are now able to visualize the data that is needed in order to make a business case come to life. And then automatically create test cases. Think about that. Automatically create test cases and write testing scripts automatically. That's huge. That makes testing sexy. Thank you. Okay? But now, once you extract this data, there are some issues you've got to face, and you've got to make sure that you're taking those into account. There's privacy issues. You've got to take, production-like information. You've got to be able to replicate that. So what we do is things like synthetic data generation. We study production data, understand the profile of that data, and synthetically generate it, therefore protecting the privacy or confidentiality of the data that exists in production, and yet to be able to get the performance that we desire out of the application. So that's really, really cool, okay? Not too many people have that, but a huge amount of interest in this area. So once we do this, we're able to rapidly design, execute automated unit testing, functional, regression, load, performance, non-functional testing, you name it. At every step of the development lifecycle, you're now able to use this test data. Again, it's massive. And by doing so, you're now able to get the right data at the right place at the right time. And it's now the right time to shift left. Get it? Cool. All right. And finally, it's the right time to shift left. End-to-end automation. I've talked about it, but really this is really orchestration. Okay. Although it might seem fairly simple, and people often say, "Hey, is this it's sort of like a workflow management tool?" Yes, it is. It is what promotes code from one environment to the next, all the way to production. But those deployments are not simple. It brings downtime. You have to make people come in on and work weekends. Okay, it might, in some instances, take a whole couple of days before, and you've got to bring your business down for that. In a 24/7 environment, that time is precious. And then should something go wrong, it takes you a lot more time to recover. So, and when you throw in the complexity of all the kinds of products that you have to interface with at each stage, open source applications, existing application, ERP systems, becomes very important. And this is also the point in time where we start providing feedback loops from the monitoring system, so we understand what's going on. And that's the part which Richard will be talking about. So, I have a couple minutes, but I want to just share with you some of our continuous delivery customers and how they've succeeded. ING is a poster child of continuous delivery. They've been on this journey for about 5 years. The first app that they released, if you saw in the video, it was really poor. They've said it, so it's public knowledge, but today it's one of the best apps in the European market. And they now deploy more than 50,000 times a month. That's 50,000 times a month with CA release automation. Okay, and that's the kind of performance you wouldn't expect that, to hear that kind of volume, but that gives them a tremendous amount of power and reach to be able to launch new products, enter new markets, and so forth. So everything that we said on that video really applies to them. We're also seeing retailers and consumer goods companies like cosmetic companies like L'Oreal taking advantage of these kinds of tools. So this space is really hot, it's exciting, very relevant in order for all those companies that are trying to become horses, or those that are trying to fight back against the unicorns. And while it's not just about the technology, but you've got to arm the people who are writing code, testing code, deploying code with the right kind of tools and capabilities in order for them to be successful and to be able to deliver a better and more awesome experience for your customers. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to hand it over to Richard, who, Richard,